Hi Derm Babes, it's Dr. Nada Bawachi, board certified dermatologist, lifestyle medicine enthusiast, and owner of Bergen Dermatologies. Welcome to Where Dermatology and Wellness Align. I have my plans, and today I'm going to be talking with Vanessa De Jesus Guzman about mindfulness. So stay tuned and enjoy. Today we have a special guest with us, Vanessa De Jesus Guzman, Free to Be Mindful, and she's going to talk to us about how she's making her community healthy. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what you instill in your community and why you started your practice.
Yeah, I'll share with you. I started my career actually off as a teacher. I used to teach second grade, and I was more interested in making sure the kids were okay socially and emotionally, and not so much in math and science and all the rest. And then I transferred over to being a school counselor, and that was amazing, but I still wanted to do more, especially for our youth, because they need more and more, and we've seen that as generations go on. And then I started my own practice, and it's wonderful because I really get to do the deep work with kids, but of course, kids don't raise themselves.
No, they do not.
Yeah, so we work a lot with parents as well, with parenting, and as my practice name is Free to Be Mindful, my jam is mindfulness. I feel like that's the underlying thread that weaves everything all together, because we're not effective parents, effective professionals, effective people if we are, out of whack.
Out of sorts, for sure. So how do you define mindfulness? Because I think it's such like a big term, and I don't think a lot of people understand what mindfulness means. So what is mindfulness?
I like using the definition, paying attention to the right here and right now with kindness and with curiosity.
Okay.
So when you're paying attention to paying attention,
right,
you just see kind of what's happening. And it doesn't mean that you are floating away on a cloud and rainbows and unicorns and butterflies and oming.
Even though we want that.
We want that, and it can be a result.
Right.
But I always say, you could be mindfully pissed off. You could be mindfully in your feels, as long as you're aware of what's happening, where you are, aware of how your body feels, let's say when you're angry, aware of responding instead of reacting, and all of those things. That's how I define mindfulness. And when you're present, then you can be curious not only about the world, but about yourself. Sometimes I think of, the best ideas come when you're in the shower.
Yes.
And that's because you're there.
Right, you're present.
Yes, and not doing a million things on our mile-long to-do list as we all have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you're kind to yourself because you're learning more about yourself. And then the added layer, once you get past the basics, is to let judgment go. And that's tough for us as human, as women, as mothers, is to let that go and be kind to ourselves.
Absolutely. So I think, it's interesting because I was having a conversation this weekend about balance. Yeah. And the person I was speaking with is like, I don't like that term. She was like, I don't like that term. Because, it's hard to find balance in anything. And I said, well, you know what, you want to kind of find balance in the way you're in work, at the home life, your friend life, and, try to find balance within all of those pillars or activities in your life. Yeah. And then another individual is like, well, I don't like that either. I like harmony. To find harmony in everything. Okay. So I guess my question is, what umbrella term should we use? Is there an umbrella term, or is it however you roll?
Whatever rolls with your language, with how you're feeling, harmony, balance. As long as your energy, is kind of like flowing and not too high, not too low, and understanding that feelings come and go, right? Energy comes and goes. We're never going to be happy all the time. We're never going to be upset all the time. Yeah. But just realizing where you are in your body, of what you're doing, so that you can show up as your best self, even if you have big emotions, or even if you have more positive ones, if we're going to label them.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think it's so hard to be present. Yeah. There's so much going on with the busy schedules, the kids. So how does one be present so that they can be more mindful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tough because we're always pulled in a gazillion different directions.
Correct.
Our phones are turn off all the notifications,
Yes.
but then we're needed, you know,
Yeah.
especially as adults and in the different roles that we play and where we're always, you know, our attention is pulled over here and over
Yes.
there. But we can be mindful. I always use the example, even in washing your hands.
Okay.
So let's, you know, go through washing your hands.
Yeah.
You turn on the water, you get the temperature adjusted correctly.
Correct.
Not correctly to you.
Right.
You're noticing, oh, it's too hot, it's too warm, it's too cold, I'm getting it going. You use whatever soap you have, take in the sense of the soap, see if it makes bubbles, where does it lay in your hands, are you singing happy birthday twice?
Right. Let's make sure we do that.
All
Remember
the
in COVID,
things.
right?
And then kind of seeing, even kids really are good, really good at reminding us how to be mindful because they are present all the time,
Yeah.
albeit for short spurts at a time because their attention spans are like ping pong balls, but they're very present. And my son will tell me like, oh, this water spout is smooth as opposed to being kind of like a foamy, you know,
Okay.
depending on how the spout is. And that in itself is being mindful because you're aware of how the water's coming out. Typically, I wash my hands and I'm like, what's the next thing I got to do?
Right.
Because we always have things to do.
Absolutely.
So, and then even when you're drying your hands, you know, putting lotion on your hands. So that's a very simple example. And I like for folks to know that mindfulness is not an added thing because we already do it, you know? So when you think of the things that you love, I love salsa dancing or riding my Peloton.
Yes.
Okay, so when I am doing those two things, I'm not thinking about the laundry or the dishes in the sink or all the things I have to do or the things I have to do for work. I am fully there.
You're present.
Yeah, so we are mindful every day.
Okay.
Now it's just knowing what it looks like, truly how it feels like, and then expanding it into the rest of our lives.
Right. So being present, but also being focused when you're present.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, focused, aware.
Aware, yeah. Because I think I have a hard problem because I'm present, but I may not be focused because I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to
check the
accomplish everything.
boxes.
Yes. Just trying to check off all the to-dos. Absolutely. So interestingly, so let's say you try all these techniques and you still feel like you're struggling as a parent, as a mom. When is it a good time to seek a therapist? Because it's so taboo in the brown and black community to see a therapist.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest to parents and those who are not even parents?
Right, to everyone. I think it's really good to understand where the baseline is of our normal everyday functioning, you know? So if you find yourself feeling too much that even to go out, you know, to get out of bed is too much. If it interferes with your everyday activities, if the things that used to bring you joy no longer bring you joy, if you are so hypersensitive or, you know, of what's going on and it gives you too many worried feelings, if it just gets in the way from what your baseline was, that's when it's time, whether it be as grown-ups or even for kids as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, and we want to be mindful that knowing different seasons bring different things. So obviously some seasons are going to be more busy than others. I always say in the summer, nobody has any problems.
Yes.
The sun kind
You
of
get a
cures
break,
everything,
right? Yes.
But then when the school year starts, typically we see, you know, littles and adults kind of like ramp up again around the holidays. So understanding that we have seasons, but when it interferes with your everyday functioning, that's when it's time to seek a licensed professional, and knowing that it doesn't have to be for the rest of your life.
Right.
You know, it could just be for short spurts.
Exactly.
And you don't have to think at big kind of diagnoses, because we don't want to diagnose ourselves. We want to leave that to the professionals.
That's right.
But you don't have to be, you know, anxiety or depression or schizophrenic or bipolar. You could just be having a hard time and need to speak with somebody to kind of get you back on ease. But sometimes just a couple of months does it. And then you're past that season, and then maybe in a couple of months or in a year or two, you go back for when you need it again.
I love that. I love that it's like as needed.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like this chronic commitment. Obviously, there's some who need it, you know, but just as you go. And, you know, I think what's hard is that I see a lot of patients who come in and they say to me, hey, by the way, you know, I want to find someone who looks like me, who can identify with me.
Yes.
Where do I go?
Yes.
So is there like a resource at all? Because, you know, I only know like maybe I know you, and I know another individual, but I don't know anybody else.
Yeah.
So what can we tell the community out there? Like, how do we find a brown or black therapist who could help us?
Yeah, and it's so important because sometimes you don't want to kind of explain why it is that you can't talk to your parents a certain way, even though you're a grown adult.
Yes.
Just because it's woven within our culture, you know? So it is important, and I even find that people seek me out because I look like them and I understand their culture, even though it may not be the same, but just a full understanding. So it's so very important. So 2 directories that I use often is Therapy for Black Girls, an awesome directory.
Amazing.
And I am personally a part of Latinx Therapy.
Okay.
So therapyforblackgirls.com, latinxtherapy.com, and there's so many others. Those are 2 of the ones that I always refer to and I'm a part of.
Nice.
And you can find people who speak your language or who just know you for you.
I love
and you
that.
don't have to do that extra explaining.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I think if we take off that barrier, then people will be more open and just kind of vomit their thoughts.
Yeah.
And then they would just feel connected to their provider.
Absolutely. And then it doesn't have to, let's say if you're not at the therapy point, but you're saying, I need something more and I don't know kind of where to go. I'd like to share, I'm a co-creator of a movement called Mindfulness with People of Color, where we see you because we are you.
Ooh.
And we have a membership community, and it's specifically to talk about mindfulness and meditation in our language, in English, but in our language, because it looks differently depending on your cultural background. And we provide education and live, meditation sits and a lot of just information and resources to bring peace and ease to your life so that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be so hard. You can go through hard things without kind of feeling anchored down.
I love that. So I love that you are offering that. Now, do you offer that for kids too? So, let's talk about kids. Because I feel like kids are, I think parenting is so hard. And the one aspect of parenting that I find challenging is that emotional uplifting.
Yeah.
I feel like, I'm drained all day because I'm uplifting my patients all day long, and then I have to come home and I have to parent and I'm like giving them everything. At the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, but I have a 13-year-old and I have a 9-year-old and they're completely different. And sometimes, I feel like I'm just a referee. Like I'm dealing with a tantrum here. Okay, so let me make sure he's okay. And a tantrum over there. So, what can we do for kids?
Yeah.
And what are you doing for kids?
And there's so much that weighs on you. I only have one, but then I have a golden doodle, so it's like 2.
And you have your husband.
I mean,
we won't go there.
No. But it's so much to carry, and then sometimes you feel like you give all professionally during the day, that at night sometimes you then go to sleep with that guilt of how was I for my own family?
Yes.
And that's a lot to carry. That can carry very heavy. So for kids, know that parents should know that we're teaching mindfulness and really emotional intelligence, because that's woven in as well from when they're littles. So you look at a baby 3-4 months old and you're trying to make them laugh, and then you smile, they smile, you smile back, and they're already getting the foundations to a lot of things that are going to help them later on. Teaching your kids how to play nice, how to share, getting down on the rug and playing with them. All of that, you're learning more about your kid is learning from you, but you're helping the relationship. And when you have a good relationship, then when things get more intense and the tantrums come, even if it's from, I always say broken bananas, and then all of a sudden it's a big to-do, then you can talk to them because you have that relationship there. You can help them be a little bit more at ease. However, if you don't kind of check yourself, right, then sometimes we trigger our kids without even knowing. So just building that relationship and playing with kids, regardless if you're playing on the floor or on the switch or driving or they're driving you, you're building that relationship that can help to moving toward mindfulness. So things that I'm doing to help that as well is weaving in social emotional learning with mindfulness, with emotional intelligence through virtual mindfulness classes for kids.
Wow.
So I hold that a couple of times a month. They're awesome for grades K to 5 or so. And we use literature, we use dancing and movement so that they can really learn what to do when they're experiencing big feelings. And that can be whether it be anger or even excitement, how do I calm myself down and be more at ease? And then they can implement that at home when they're having the tantrums,
that.
at school when they're with their friends, and so on.
Right.
And it's super educational for parents too.
That's fantastic, because it's interesting that you have that course, that class, the master class, however you want to call it, because when my kids get upset, I'm like, breathe, take 8 counts in through your nose, and then breathe through your nose, to just help them relax, because I think it's hard for kids to articulate what they're feeling. And the only way they can articulate it is like slamming the door.
Right, through their behavior.
Through their behavior.
Yeah.
And it frustrates us as parents, and then we start yelling, and then it's just like an ugly scene altogether.
Yeah.
So I think that class is amazing, and I wish schools would offer that too. Like, our schools, since you were in the school system prior in your prior life, what are schools doing? And do you think schools should be doing more?
Yeah, educator for 18 years, so I started at super young, of course. And they are doing more, especially after the pandemic. Nationwide, we have a lot of grants and federal monies that are going to schools. So you'll see school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, and even teachers, because it shouldn't be one person that somebody sees once in a while or has to go to a special office. It should be really integrated within the daily life of school, and they should be covering social emotional skills. And that can be as simple as greeting a child at a door when they come in, asking them, how are you today? Really getting to know them on a personal level, and then talking about, which I remember even doing when I was a teacher so many moons ago, I need a break right now. So I'm gonna go stand over here just for a moment. I need a 1-minute break. And even though you're kind of like, what are you putting yourself in timeout?
Right.
But you're really teaching them that sometimes you need to walk away before coming back and kind of being at ease. And it's not only quiet breaks, it can be movement breaks. So teachers can do different things in transition, like, let's stand up and like touch our toes 5 times before moving on to the next subject. Or if you have, some of our kids are a little bit more spicy and need a little bit more movement, depending on things that are happening. Go into the hallway with supervision, of course. Go down the hall, run down the hall, and come back. So they're getting the wiggles out before being kind of stuck in a chair or in a rug for a really long time. So we ask a lot from our kids. We want to make sure that we're teaching them on how to deal with big emotions as well.
I love that. I love that. It's so important, this mindfulness, because my son, he struggles a lot because he likes to move a lot in class, and it's hard for him to sit still. My daughter's a little bit on the different side, so I think learning from you and all these tips are very impactful. And I just want to let our community know that, Vanessa is available. She has all these offerings. So how can our community find you, Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And you can find me at my website at freetobemindful.com. And there I have all the information from therapy to Amiga Mom support groups to mindfulness with people of color, virtual mindfulness classes, my podcast, Free to Be Mindful.
Podcast. I had no idea. I love that.
Yeah, specifically made for parents, for educators, anybody working with kids. And they're short because we're busy people.
We're busy. I love that.
And at the end of every episode, I include a 1 or 2 minute guided meditation to kind of get you back and, go about your day to reset. Yeah. So all of that at freetobemindful.com.
I love that. I'm glad that you are offering this to our community, because there's not many of you in our community whatsoever who are teaching this. And then also, I love that you work with parents and kids, because I feel that sometimes when you're looking for someone in this space, I only work with the adults. I don't work with kids, and I think it really takes like a
joint effort.
It really is a joint effort for sure. Yes, great. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We're Dermatology and Wellness Align with Vanessa De Jesus Guzman, and you know what? I hope you learned something, because this is something that you can use for the rest of your life. All these tips, just to make sure you are present, because it manages stress levels and makes you stay calm. Of course, thank you.